It's Monday, so Joe is with us, the editor-in-chief of Ukrainian Freedom News and a daily war correspondent for Chicago's WGN Radio. Hey, Joe. Nice to see you again. I assume you're in Lviv, based on the background that we know very well.
Well, Michał, last night was the biggest drone attack since Russia launched a full-scale invasion on Ukraine. At least 60 of these Iranian Shahed basically suicide bomber drones were sent throughout Ukraine, including 35 over the skies of Kyiv. All of those were shot down by Ukrainian air defense. But of course, when you shoot down these drones, there's debris, and so damage is caused, and there were injuries. And also, this depletes Ukraine's, reserve of, air defense. This was a fourth attack on Kyiv in the past 8 days. So that's an escalation. That's, I don't always like that word, but that's an increase. There's something new here, a new stage of this war happening. Meanwhile, the Russians sent missiles to other cities, including Odessa, where they hit a recreational facility and a food storage facility last night, and more than 10,000 square meters were on fire. And so as we wait in this, we've had many reports the past, even, for example, on Friday evening, there were reports of missile launches. Those turned out to be fake. They were simulated launches. And so instead of firing missiles at Ukraine lately, it's mainly been these drones, as everyone sort of waits to see, who's going to make the next big move.
What do you make of it? Because I remember, and our viewers remember our conversations 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, 1 month ago. You were mentioning constantly that the level of those attacks became lower than it was in the previous phases of the war. And we do have, as you mentioned, escalation right now. Why?
Well, it's hard to know. I mean, we hear right now we're in the most intense phase of the propaganda, and there's even Ukraine. We hear so much about this counteroffensive. Everyone's sort of waiting for something. In fact, until the city of Kherson was under a curfew, a strange curfew, for 58 hours until 6 o'clock this morning, since late last week. We don't know what that entails. Clearly, there's some maneuverings happening. Ukrainian officials have started to speak a bit more boldly about this counteroffensive. And meanwhile, it looks like Russia has been, by sending these drones, which are much cheaper than missiles, into Ukraine, they've been testing the Ukrainian air defense. And then with these simulated launches that put much of the country under air raid alarms, and they turn out to be nothing. Again, Russia is testing, it's pushing, maybe, still trying to break Ukrainian will, which, obviously, I guess, because their own people are so different from Ukrainians, they don't, after 15 months, almost 15 months, they don't realize you can't break Ukrainian will. But we have seen, Russians sort of testing and poking the system, and while Ukraine is preparing whatever it plans to do next. And then there was, Russia had these, and we talked about this many months ago, but these feared Khinzal missiles. Not a huge stockpile, very expensive, supersonic, and Ukrainian officials said months ago that Ukraine was incapable of stopping these missiles, which is a terrifying thought. Perhaps, we don't know for sure, but, only about 50 of these missiles in the Russian stockpiles, but they can use them to hit exactly what they want. And then May 3rd at 2:40 in the morning, people in Kyiv reported hearing an incredibly loud explosion. And they're used to hearing explosions, but it was something unusual. And now it's been confirmed that was the work of a Patriot missile from the United States intercepting the Khinzal Russian supersonic missile.
So let's stop.
Russians, in some cities, they target civilians, totally, like in Kharkiv. They just want to terrorize the population, or Nikopol. But in other places, more in the interior, it seems that they're on the hunt for more strategic targets. Often they end up, they hit civilian targets, but they're looking for something in those places. And these Khinzal missiles are very precise. And so if the Russians had good intel, or maybe they're using bad intel, but they think they're hitting something, these missiles are one of their most powerful tools. And now with the Patriot missiles that arrived in late April, the Patriot Missile Defense System, which is the crown jewel of American, one of the crown jewels of American defense industry. it seems that for the first time ever, Khinzal missiles was stopped. And this was even noted by, I mean, it was an unusual sound even that the people heard in Kyiv. And so this gives Ukraine, and now it's publicly known that Ukraine has a new level of strength against whatever Russia might try to send. If Russia wants to keep sending these missiles, I mean, it's going to be a game of cat and mouse, making sure everything's strategically placed on the Ukrainian side. But Ukraine does have the ability to stop it, and that's again, I mean, it's a huge. And this is strange because I hear when I talk with people in Washington, and sometimes you see this in the media, getting more and more worried, crossing these red lines, and worried. And I hear from people in Washington worried about, everything turning nuclear. But what you see, many of those people underestimated Ukraine in the first days and weeks of this war, which I remember quite well. And now you see, because of these weapons arriving and because of Ukrainian ingenuity and steadfastness, Ukraine is in a very strong position. And so that's why we look to, so as you were mentioning, tomorrow is Russia's, is the biggest holiday in Russia, right? It's bigger than Christmas and Easter for the Russians, and it's the victory of the Allies over the Nazis in World War II. And it's interesting that it is really their main holiday, that it is such a part of their identity. And you have to wonder, do they not have anything else? I mean, most nations, you celebrate your national day, your Constitution Day. In the United Kingdom, they have the coronation. There are other things that build a nation. One thing, just to I think we should note that, the fact that, yes, I mean, here in Lviv, on this day, they were not liberated. It became an era of suffering and oppression. For the language and the religion, and so much. And so, I was thinking how as I read the news and stories of the coronation in Britain over the weekend, and that's a nation that stands for Ukraine. And I thought, watching that, I said, that's a manifest counterweight of civilization against these barbaric, unmajestic despots in Moscow and also other places like Beijing. And Russia does not have anything like what we saw in Britain. There's no culture and here. So as the king was crowned in Westminster, in the heart of a democracy that's so well protected, in the UK, I was thinking of a different type of majesty, the bloody majesty of people here in Ukraine, willing to face death for democracy and freedom. And so here you have Ukrainians at the edge of the free world, and backed by so many people around the world, but willing to stand against this evil, as people did, against the Nazis. And just a few examples to make it really visceral for everyone. But last week I received the news that 2 Canadian soldiers, I know, Kyle and Cole, they came here, they're very cheerful warriors coming to stand for Ukraine. They were killed in the fighting near Bakhmut, people who did not have to be here. In the past few days, 9 Ukrainians who were working as deminers in the Kherson region, in the liberated parts of it, were killed by a Russian missile strike as they tried to take mines out of forests and fields to make life safe for farmers and children. And then there was a woman and her husband. They were driving near the city of Kherson late last week when the Russians began to shell the city. The Russians hit a grocery store. They hit a train. By the way, after they hit the train still arrived on time in Lviv. But there was a story of this woman driving, and then the Russian shelling hits their car. Her husband loses control, and she grabs the wheel, and she looks, and her husband's face is gone. And so we just cannot forget this. As people talk about the events of 1945, what matters now are the events of today, this ongoing hell that is being unleashed upon Ukrainians.
Thank you for introducing Ukraine on your social media pages. That's very important that much more people can get more information about the situation here and how everybody can help Ukraine to stay stronger and to save all the world.
Что он сказал?
Well, which side are you on?
На чьей ты стороне?
Come on now. Oh, which side are you on?
На чьей ты стороне?